Hello, welcome to the Cafe on Air podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Big Italy 42, here once again talking some NBA basketball, and in honor of the NCAA tournament kicking off today, I'm going to go ahead and give you a couple teams I'm looking at that I think may be some sneaky teams today. Could get themselves some wins, maybe make a small run here in the tournament. I'm going to go with some upsets in the first round. I'm going to take Eastern Washington to beat Georgetown, and I'm going to take Buffalo to beat West Virginia. Those are my two upsets. That's all you got to listen to. Moving on to the NBA. Looking at last night's action, pretty odd night. Some fairly low scores for the most part across the board. Popular plays like Andre Drummond kind of didn't pan out. We saw yet again another late scratch. This one didn't hurt a lot of people. He was a low-owned player, but I had myself quite a few shares. Justin Hamilton is the backup for Minnesota, was getting a ton of run, playing well, got scratched 18 minutes, give or take a few, after tip-off. Was told he wasn't going to play. Obviously, he wouldn't have been starting anyway, but some zeros across the board for me and some others as well. You had guys like Justin Holiday, who had a fairly decent game, 19.75 DK points last night. So he was an okay fill-in. You had guys like Rodney Hood, who had decent games. Then you had some huge games from guys we didn't expect. Marcus Smart, 54.25. Obviously, Russell Westbrook did his thing. Pretty much paid off his price tag and a little bit more. 65.75. Dwayne Wade continued to be on fire with 47. LaMarcus Aldridge, 57.5 fantasy points. And Nikola Mirotic, another huge game for him, 46.75. And Blake Griffin continued to do what he's been doing, 42.5 fantasy points for him last night. And JJ Redick, 41. So some big performers we expected, some big performers we didn't expect. DeMarre Carroll, a guy I talked about quite a bit yesterday on the podcast. Hope you got yourself some shares. 42.5. He was my de facto small forward guy there. Also Chandler Parsons, who was a little bit of a disappointment there. In a good matchup, kind of thought he would have himself a better game. I whiffed on that one, just 18 fantasy points for him. Didn't play a lot of minutes. Rick Carlisle said he wasn't benched. I don't know. I'm not reading too much into that, but either way, subpar performance for him. Just 4 games tonight, which seemingly a bad thing, but at the same time, on Thursdays, we often get just 2 games. So I'm going to run down the odds for you here real quick. Minnesota at New York, 197.5 point total. 1 point favorite. Yes, favorite for New York. Surprising there. Didn't think that was going to be happening anytime soon, but New York is playing better ball. Did knock off the Spurs the other day. So, I mean, Minnesota not exactly world beaters themselves. Denver at Houston, 214.5 point total. This is the game you want the most exposure to. Houston, a 7.5 point favorite here. New Orleans at Phoenix, 200 point total. 1.5 point favorite for New Orleans. Another close game there. And Utah at the Lakers. Utah, 4.5 point favorite. 181.5 point over-under there. So I am going to be looking at both FanDuel and DraftKings on this shorter slate today. Really no need to go separate with both of them. So I'm going to kick things off talking as I do. Point guard. Top option here is subjective. I mean, you've got Tyreek Evans sitting at $8,300 on DraftKings. You could look that direction. He's 76 on... I'm sorry, that was on FanDuel. 76 on DraftKings. Ricky Rubio down to $7,500 on FanDuel. $7,800 on DraftKings. Could look that way as well, but he's not seeing big minutes. Just 2 points his last game. Obviously, that's not where his value lies. Did have 8 points, or 8 rebounds, 8 assists. You could look that direction. Either one of those guys I think is a fine option. The popular option, obviously, going to be Alexei Shved. $7,000 on FanDuel. Price really getting jacked up there, but playing great basketball. $6,600 on DraftKings. So you could certainly go that route. You believe in the narrative factor. He is an ex-Timberwolves, so maybe he's got something to prove there from a team that didn't want him. Maybe he's finally found his home. As you see, he's been playing great ball. Will be one of the most popular picks on the board tonight for good reason. Looks like Brandon Knight doubtful once again tonight. So that's going to change up some rotations there for Phoenix. Another point guard option you could look at here. I mean, you hate to say it. It's Trey Burke. He's disappointed before against the Lakers this season. Playing okay basketball, but guys that I'd normally be targeting like Jordan Clarkson, I'm not a big fan of tonight against Utah. Like I said before, don't like targeting anyone against them. There's really not a lot of options. You're going to have to be paying up here at point guard. Tyreek Evans, Ricky Rubio, Lexi Shved, like I mentioned, all in play there. You've got Ty Lawson, who should be playing tonight. Sat out the last game, sat out 2 games before that. Listed as questionable for tonight. We'll see. Obviously, if he doesn't go, you're looking at Jameer Nelson, $5,500 on FanDuel and on DraftKings, an even better price at just $4,500. And he has over 30 fantasy points in 3 straight games. And one of those games, Ty Lawson played. So he's definitely playing well. Give him a look tonight at $5,500 and $4,500. I like him a great deal. Not a lot else to see at point guard today. Moving over to shooting guard. Your top option, it isn't close. It's James Harden, $10,600. I myself, I'm sure you, many others have been burned by him recently. In fact, 3 of his last 4 games, 34 or less fantasy points. So James Harden obviously not playing his best basketball this season, but he's not playing poorly either. He's just not putting up a ton of points, actual physical points. So biggest upside of anyone on the board, except for someone I'm going to get to later. I'm sure you know where I'm going with that. James Harden, $10,600 on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he's $10,800. He's got to be your number 2 option on the slate tonight. So get yourself some exposure in your tournaments. I wouldn't recommend fading both the big names. Eric Bledsoe, once again, sitting here a little bit overpriced, but he is coming off one of his better games of the season. Granted, it was against New York, but 49 fantasy points, 21, 9, and 11 there. Brandon Knight not supposed to play, like I said. Doubtful. You can get Eric Bledsoe for 82 on DraftKings. I think he's a fine tournament play. I'm not going to be going out of my way to target him. A guy coming off a huge game last night, Kevin Martin. And I will be the first to admit I had 0 shares of Kevin Martin. In fact, one tournament lineup I was building kind of landed directly on Kevin Martin in that last slot, and I said, no thanks. I don't think he has the upside I need. I want a little bit better of a floor if possible, although he has been playing well. Minutes until the last few games, kind of fluctuating in the mid-20s. Wasn't really interested in that. I went down to Joe Johnson. About a 40-point difference there for me. So big mistake on my end. Kevin Martin had 51 fantasy points last night. Huge game. You like to think he could be in line for a nice big game again tonight against New York. $5,800 on DraftKings is a steal. $6,100 on FanDuel. Still not necessarily a cash game play for me, but there are not a lot of options either. So got to give him a look as well. You could look down a little bit further to a guy like Eric Gordon. He's pretty much going to get you 20 to 25 points. Not going to get you much more. Probably not going to get you much less. 6,000 FanDuel, 5,800 DraftKings. I think he's an okay option. Like I said, not a ton of upside there. Interesting play once again. Will Barton did have a subpar performance last time out, but it was the day after playing 47 minutes. It was against Memphis, just 15 fantasy points. His price is definitely getting up there. $6,000 listed on FanDuel, but still only $4,500 on DraftKings. So I think he's a DraftKings specific play for me tonight. Other routes you could be going here, Randy Foye, not in a terrible spot here, $4,600. Last 2 games, 38 and 29 FanDuel points. Listed at just $4,600 tonight on FanDuel. Great price there. DraftKings just $4,300. I think I would rather go that route than Will Barton. Will Barton more of the GPP guy here for me. And elsewhere at shooting guard, nobody I'm interested in playing tonight. Like I said, small slate, no reason to force guys into your lineup. Pretty concentrated value across the board here. So moving on here, Danilo Gallinari, much like Ty Lawson, much like Kenneth Faried, sat out last game to rest. I'm not sure what Denver's resting for. Maybe the NIT tournament. A little NCAA reference for you there. I don't know what Denver's resting for. I know the guys are playing big minutes, but got nothing to play for. I mean, maybe rest a guy at a time. Either way, he's coming back. He should be well rested. He's sitting at $6,400 on FanDuel. I think that's an okay price for him. Going to be a fine cash game play for you as well. And $6,000 on DraftKings. Not a bad price. If you look at Gordon Hayward, probably the biggest upside guy here at small forward. $7,600 on FanDuel is a fine price. $75 on DraftKings, very similar. Matching up with the Lakers, I think Gordon Hayward could have himself a very nice game. Andrew Wiggins, really frustrating player right now. I mean, he's playing big minutes, mid to high 30s, sometimes even 40, and he's just not producing. I'm not playing Andrew Wiggins. I forced him into a couple lineups last night. Wasn't happy about it. I'm not playing him tonight. I don't care if it's a short slate. Until I see some sort of consistent production out of him, that's a pass for me. No thanks. But who I will be playing is Trevor Ariza. $5,800 on FanDuel. Still criminally underpriced as he is. $6,200 on DraftKings. They're a little ahead of the curve on this one, but 4 of his last 5 games outside of a game against Utah, once again letting that one slide, 30-plus fantasy points. So Trevor Ariza should be a very popular play tonight. I don't blame you for taking him. I will have quite a bit of him in my lineups. Corey Brewer sitting at $5,400 at small forward on FanDuel. Shooting guard on DraftKings at $5,000. He's had some ups and downs, but 4 of his last 5 over 30 fantasy points as well. So seems when Harden's not having the production, Ariza, Brewer, those kind of guys are taking over and getting some higher point totals. So, I mean, you got to pick your poison here. You want to chase the big points with Harden, or do you want to go a little bit more balanced with some of these other guys and think maybe Harden goes with more of the distribution route tonight? So it's going to be interesting to see where people go with that. Rodney Hood, who I mentioned last night, kind of a disappointment. Wasn't a great matchup anyway. 14.6 FanDuel points. He's listed once again at $4,600. Same price as last night on FanDuel. Same price on DraftKings as well, $4,600. I think he's a fine fill-in. I'm not going out of my way to put him in my lineups. Quincy Pondexter had himself a nice game last time out. I'm not buying too much into it. He's a fine guy to put in your cash games if he fits, just because he plays a lot of minutes. $4,100 on FanDuel, $4,000 on DraftKings. Like I said, an okay filler, not a guy I'm actively targeting. Not a big fan there. You can look at Wilson Chandler as well, $5,700 on FanDuel, and his DraftKings price, once again, $5,300. As we've noticed, a lot of guys cheaper over there. So Wilson Chandler, if you like him, a little bit better of a play on DraftKings. Moving over to power forward. I don't need to tell you that Anthony Davis is the top play on this slate. Most slates, almost every slate. Did fall awkwardly in his last game. Returned, shot very poorly, still ended up with 46.4 fantasy points. So when you take into account the fact that he's still just $11,500 on DraftKings, shot just 6 for 18 in his last game, managed almost 50 points on DraftKings, he's still the top option on tonight's slate. Phoenix still doesn't have anyone download to contend with him. Alex Len, an okay defender, above average defender. Markieff Morris, no. Doesn't really matter who else they put on him. Doesn't really matter who most teams put on him. Anthony Davis is your top option tonight. I'll have him more than any other stud on this slate. $12,400 on FanDuel. A little bit pricey, but, I mean, you're going to need to have yourself either Davis or Harden in your cash games. Probably going to need some exposure to both in tournaments, so I'm going to Anthony Davis there. Kenneth Faried, $6,900 on FanDuel. Once again, a good price on DraftKings, $6,900. I still think he's underpriced slightly. He has solid upside. He's playing good minutes. Sat out the last game. Matchup tonight against Terrence Jones isn't the greatest, but I do like him quite a bit in tournaments. I think he's got a nice floor. He's done it against tougher matchups recently, so really not concerned there. And as we know, Terrence Jones really the only consistent rebounder that Houston has down low. So I think Kenneth Faried will have himself a nice game on the glass as well. Speaking of Terrence Jones, you can go that route. 67 FanDuel, 68 DraftKings. Played pretty poorly in his last game. Just 14 fantasy points. Before that, pretty much a 30-plus performer for quite some time. So I think he's a fine play, but more reserved for GPPs for me. I think I'd rather go Kenneth Faried here. Just, I don't know. If James Harden gets going, I don't know how much will be left for Terrence Jones. You got Brewer playing well. You got Ariza playing well. I just prefer Kenneth Faried, but I think they're both fine plays. Andre Bargnani, once again, going to be a popular play. 59 FanDuel, 61 DraftKings. And coming off another big performance. 37.5 fantasy points on DraftKings against the San Antonio Spurs. Not an ideal matchup. So now tonight, you get him against Minnesota, who's weak down low. Gotta like that spot for him. Some other guys you can look at that are cheaper. Donatas Motiejunas, 38.75 DraftKings points his last time out. Kind of picked up the production that Terrence Jones left on the table there. $5,500, like I mentioned there, on both sites actually. So Motiejunas, a guy you could certainly be targeting here. You can look at Markieff Morris. He's got upside, certainly just a GPP play, but at $6,900 on FanDuel and then $6,400 on DraftKings. Like I said, I'd rather Faried. I'd even rather Jones or Bargnani, but I think in a tournament you could go that route. With Brandon Knight expected to miss tonight's game again, we still have value play special Marcus Morris. $5,200 on FanDuel. His price starting to creep up. $5,100 on DraftKings. Power forward at on both sites now as well. So you can look that route. He's going to see big minutes once again, assuming that Knight actually does sit. So definitely you could look that route. Cheap guy, if you're looking for someone not playing a ton of minutes, but was playing well up until his last game, Tarek Black. Not a guy I'm going in on at all. However, if everything else in my lineup I love, he fits, I guess I'll slot him in if I have to. But really a stay away. As you notice, I'm really not targeting any Lakers players. I don't like targeting anyone against the Utah. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that. Hope you're not sick of it, but it's just a losing proposition. They are incredible on the defensive end right now. Moving over to the big men at center, your obvious top option. Speaking of the Utah Jazz, Rudy Gobert. Gobert or go home. $8,200 listed on FanDuel. On DraftKings, $8,100. I mean, you don't love the price, but he's got a floor of about 35 points. He's got a ceiling over 50. He's by far the top option tonight. If Nikola Pekovic ends up sitting out again, you've got, once again, Gorgui Dieng. Maybe Justin Hamilton if he's over that headache. They said illness. I heard headache. Whatever it may be, he sat out last night. I already mentioned that. He's still a much, much better play on DraftKings where he's 4,500, 5,600 on FanDuel. Little much for me, but not a lot of options, so wouldn't blame you if you went that route, assuming Pekovic is out. Other options you've got, nobody I really love. I mean, you've got Yusuf Nurkic, who is getting 20-ish minutes right now, but his price is a little higher than I'd like it to be. You could look at a guy like Cole Aldrich, who also not playing a lot of minutes, but being productive with the minutes he's getting. I mean, for me, it's going to be go ahead and slot Rudy Gobert in there. Maybe some Gorgui Dieng if Pekovic sits. Maybe some Justin Hamilton and some Cole Aldrich in tournaments. But that's going to be about it for me at center. Pretty ugly. Not a great slate, but still better than what we usually get on a Thursday. So I'm happy with it. I'll be definitely getting myself some tournament exposure. Limiting my cash games. That's the last thing I want to talk about here is there's been a whole lot of guys sitting. There's been a whole lot of late scratches. One reason or another, it's really been hard to say. So keep your eye on these things. Obviously, you can't see things like MCW, like Justin Hamilton last night coming, but you can monitor the games that matter, the teams that could end up sitting people. And outside of the Nuggets, we haven't seen anything too crazy with a team out of contention resting people. So just be mindful of that. Maybe cut back your action just a little bit right now. I know I am. Just too many holes. I mean, there's just too many landmines. There's too many guys you can get stuck on and just really hurt your chances of cash game. You get 1-0 in one of your lineups, especially a cash game lineup, and you are in big trouble very quickly. So just a little word to the wise there. Just monitor these situations. Make sure you're around to check Twitter. See a whole lot of things coming out quickly, coming out, conflicting reports. Just look at the actual beat writers. A lot of people out sending out information that they don't actually know. So check out the team accounts. Check out beat writers. If you don't know who to follow, check me out on Twitter, BigItaly42. I'll help you lead you towards some lists that some other people have made that I follow that have some beat writers, some NBA information, things of that nature. And check out our sites, dailyfantasycafe.com, @DFCafe. I appreciate you once again hanging out with me here on this Thursday. I'll be back tomorrow with Spencer Limbach for a big Friday slate. Much more exciting things to go on tomorrow than this 4-game slate tonight. So look forward to that. Enjoy your NCAA tournament. Enjoy your NBA action tonight, and check out our site at dailyfantasycafe.com. I'm checking out.